Welcome to a quick guide to combat style mods. To kick things off, combat style mods are a class of armor mods in Destiny 2 that provide a huge array of different buffs to help augment your builds. Oftentimes, these mods can make or break for endgame content and are some of the core components of your builds, sometimes being even more powerful than aspects and fragments. This guide is meant to be an entry-level guide to get you up to speed with some of the lingo that's used in build videos. We'll be explaining what Charge with Light means, what elemental wells are, and Warmind cells, and all of the other stuff that you hear in build videos that may not make much sense yet. First things first, let's go over how you get combat style mods and how to equip them. Unfortunately, right now, the only way to get combat style mods is through a daily rotating shop at 88.1. I agree with a lot of what Bungie does, but this system of mod acquisition is downright terrible, and you just kinda have to keep waiting for 88.1 and hoping she has the mod that you want today. The final two slots of her mod inventory can sell combat style mods. If she ever is selling one, you should always pick it up, whether it sounds good or not. A lot of these times, these mods break the game out of nowhere, and you should always pick them up just so you make sure that you have them. You can check the Destiny 2 companion app or websites like light.gg to get her mod inventory daily to see if you should log in or not just for the mods. As for how to equip them, every armor piece in the game has a combat style mod slot as long as it was dropped post Shadowkeep. This slot is almost always the fourth slot in your armor and can accept any combat style mod. Some combat style mods also have armor elements tied to them. If one does, your armor will have to match that elemental type in order to equip it. So now we're going to go over what these mods actually do. There are three subsections of combat style mods, those being Charge with Light, which is often abbreviated as CWL, Warmind Cells, and finally, Elemental Wells. So first, we're going to start off with Charge with Light. Charge with Light is a mod system that deals with generating and consuming stacks of Charge with Light. The Charge with Light buff is effectively a currency that you can earn through some mods and consume through others to produce unique effects. By default, you can store a max of 2 stacks of Charge with Light, and these stacks appear on the left side of your screen along with the rest of your buffs. Like other buffs, if you die, you'll lose all stacks of Charge with Light. In order to gain stacks of Charge with Light, you'll have to use a stack generator mod. Stack generator mods can be easily identified by the light green icon in the center of their mod picture, like the one shown on screen. Any mod with a green colored icon will generate stacks of Charge with Light. There are two main types of generator mods, weapon-based and miscellaneous. The majority of generator mods are weapon-based, and they grant stacks of Charge with Light on multi-kills with certain weapon types. The general rule of thumb for these is that primary weapons will require 3 kills to generate your stack of Charge with Light, and special weapons will require 2. You can go to light.gg and look up a mod's name if you want to check out the exact timings and amount of kills that you need for each mod. If you want to use a certain weapon type with Charge with Light builds and don't have the mod, try Taking Charge. Everyone in the game starts with Taking Charge, and it allows you to become Charged with Light by picking up an Orb of Power. The orb generating mods on your helmet slot allow you to generate an Orb of Power on every 2 kills with weapons that match the helmet mod's energy type. The other type of generator mods are miscellaneous. Miscellaneous generator mods don't have specific activation requirements and can range from granting Charge with Light on a simple orb pickup to granting Charge with Light upon breaking a matching elemental shield. Now that you know how to generate stacks of Charge with Light, we're going to look at some ways that you can use them. Mods that consume stacks of Charge with Light have gold icons instead of green ones. The effects of these mods vary, but all of them consist of an activation requirement and an effect. For instance, Heavy Handed states that when you cast your melee ability, it will consume 1 stack of Charge with Light if you have one, and return half of your melee energy. The final type of Charge with Light mod are utility mods. These mods have a white icon in the center instead of a green or a gold one. These mods have varied effects, and most of them modify your stacks of Charge with Light or grant various effects just for having stacks. For instance, Stacks on Stacks doubles all incoming stacks of Charge with Light, allowing you to gain 2 stacks for every 1 that you receive. So now you can see how your ability loops will end up working with Charge with Light mods. You play to the requirements of your generator mods, which reward you with stacks of Charge with Light, and then you can shape those stacks into new effects with consumer mods. For example, let's go over a super simple infinite melee build that works on any subclass with just 2 Charge with Light mods. For this, you'll want any fusion rifle with Pugilist, and I'll be using Midas Reckoning, the King's Fall Raid fusion rifle. You'll also need Quick Charge and Heavy Handed. Upon getting 2 kills with your fusion rifle, you'll gain 1 stack of Charge with Light. Next, if you throw your melee ability, you'll trade that stack for 50% of your melee energy back. Now, if you repeat this cycle by getting 2 more kills with your fusion rifle, you'll not only get another stack of Charge with Light to use, but you'll also gain 40% melee energy back from Pugilist. This means that just by getting 2 kills with your fusion rifle in between melee abilities, you'll have nearly infinite melee energy. Enhanced Pugilist will bring this total energy gain up from 90% to 102%, making it completely infinite. A final, more advanced note about Charge with Light mods is that each mod provides specific effects based on what elemental type the mod is. Void mods are often much cheaper in energy cost, but come with a stat penalty. For example, Stacks on Stacks only costs 4 energy for a very strong effect, but it comes with -10 recovery. Solar mods have relatively weak effects for normal cost, but they allow you to stack multiple of the same mod on different armor pieces to improve their effects, and potentially make them better than what they could have been as a different element. For example, Firepower, a solar mod, grants 15% grenade energy back upon throwing a grenade, consuming 1 stack of Charge with Light. This is as opposed to Heavy-Handed, an Arc mod, which has the same effect but for your melee ability, but it also grants 50% instead of 15%. But due to being a solar mod, Firepower can stack, returning up to 60% with 4 stacks, and even up to 75% with 5 stacks if you get Charge with Light from teammates with mods like Powerful Friends. Arc mods have very strong effects for very high costs, and allow you to unlock a secondary effect by slotting in another Arc mod on any piece of armor that you have. For example, Heavy-Handed has a very powerful effect but costs 7 energy. Its alternative effect of ammo generation while surrounded also costs extra energy, that you use by slotting another Arc mod on your armor. So now that you know how Charge with Light mods work, you can go to light.gg and search up any mods you have questions about, and there will almost always be a small description on the website that tell you the exact parameters of the mod and how to use it. So next we're briefly going to talk about Warmind Cell mods. Warmind Cell mods are not very useful right now, but they're pretty straightforward. Warmind Cells aren't as organized as Charge with Light or Elemental Well mods, so you'll have to read descriptions to figure out how to use each one instead of just being able to look at the icon. Warmind Cell mods all have a secondary effect that allow Warmind Weapons to have a chance to generate Warmind Cells on kills. Warmind Weapons are any weapons with 7th Seraph or Aquilos in their name. With at least one Warmind mod equipped, Warmind Weapons have a small cumulative chance to generate a Warmind Cell. These cells look like glowing orange basketballs that'll sit on the ground. If you shoot these cells repeatedly, they'll explode, making a decent-sized explosion that'll go through walls. Each Warmind Cell mod provides special effects to the cells that you or your allies create, providing effects similar to those provided in the Charge with Light mod suite. For instance, Modular Lightning allows you to collect Warmind cells by walking into them and causes a burst of chain lightning when you do. Grasp of the Warmind allows you to pick up Warmind cells and throw them at enemies by holding E next to them. The list is pretty long, and the best way to learn what they do is simply by reading the Warmind Cell section mods and looking them up on light.gg to see the specifics about how each one works. Finally, Elemental Well mods. Elemental Well mods are quite possibly the most popular type of combat style mods in the game right now and grant tons of utility to you and your entire team. Similarly to Charge with Light, Elemental Wells consist of generating wells with generator mods and then using consumer mods to grant powerful effects to these wells. By default, Elemental Wells are small balls of colored energy that'll sit on the ground where they spawn. Each well has an element type that corresponds to the mod that made it. They can be Solar, Arc, Void, or Stasis. And we assume that we're also going to be getting Strand Wells and Lightfall. By default, these Elemental Wells grant 10% ability energy to your least charged ability when picked up, and if the well matches your subclass element type, it'll grant 10% energy to all of your abilities, except for your super. So first, we're going to go over the mod iconography so you can read the mod icons. Similarly to Charge with Light mods, Elemental Well mods have cues in their icons that show you what they do. Well generator mods have a full circle of pointed rays coming out from the center, whereas consumer mods only have a semicircle, and utility mods have a square. As an example, Melee Wellmaker has a full circle of rays, whereas Shield Crash Wellmaker has 2 full circles of rays, since it generates 2 Elemental Well mods on its own, whereas Melee Wellmaker only generates 1. Well of Ions, a consumer mod, has a semicircle, whereas Seeking Wells, a utility mod, has a square. An interesting example of this iconography is Elemental Charge. As you can see, not only does it have the well consumer semicircle, but it also has a green icon that Charge with Light generator mods have. This is because Elemental Charge not only consumes elemental wells, but also generates Charge with Light stacks. It uses the iconography of Charge with Light and elemental wells in conjunction with each other to create a hybrid mod. So first, we're just going to go over well generator mods. Well generator mods all ultimately have the same effect. They generate elemental wells when you meet the criteria. For example, Melee Wellmaker will generate an elemental well matching your subclass when you kill an enemy with a charged melee ability. All of these are pretty simple. Just remember, if you're looking to make some wells, look for that full circle of rays in the icon and just go read the description. As before, light.gg has some great descriptions on their website if you search the mod name. Well consumer mods, as stated before, have a semicircle of rays on their icon. These mods will grant additional effects when you collect an elemental well, in addition to the ability energy you'll gain by default. These effects can be one of two things. They can either be instantaneous, like Wall of Striking, which grants additional amounts of melee energy upon picking up an Arc Elemental Well, or they can be buff-based, like Wall of Tenacity, which grants a large damage resist bonus for a short time after picking up a Void Well. Now for utility mods, which have a square of rays on their icon. Utility well mods are pretty general and usually affect the behavior of the wells themselves when you generate them. One of the most popular utility well mods is Seeking Wells, which causes elemental wells that you generate to start seeking towards allies. Now that we talk about Seeking Wells, something to note is that whenever you generate an elemental well, everybody on your team gets a copy. So if you pick one up, everybody else on your team can also come and pick the same well up, so don't worry about stealing them from people. Before we close off elemental well mods, let's talk about elements and stacking. Unlike Charged with Light mods, elemental well mods do not have any specific effects for certain elements. Each element acts the same as every other. However, mod stacking is a bit different. In general, the only mods that stack by default are well consumer mods that produce an instantaneous effect like Well of Utility or Well of Striking, and the only outlier to this rule is Enduring Wells, which is a utility mod that stacks on its own. It's not a very useful mod, so it's not something you absolutely need to remember. Well generator mods can be made to stack by equipping Bountiful Wells, and buff-based well consumer mods can be made to stack using Elemental Time Dilation. Both of these mods work pretty similarly. When one is equipped, it allows the mods that it targets to begin stacking. The copy of Bountiful or Time Dilation also counts as one stack of every stackable mod. This means that if I wanted Melee Wellmaker to stack up to 5 times, I'd equip 1 Bountiful Wells and 4 Melee Wellmakers. Bountiful would allow the Melee Wellmakers to stack and also act like a Melee Wellmaker itself. If I equipped Bountiful Wells as well as 2 Melee Wellmakers and 2 Elemental Ordnances, I'd effectively have 3 stacks of Melee Wellmaker and 3 stacks of Elemental Ordnance, since Bountiful enables stacking for them and also counts as 1 stack of each mod that it affects. Time Dilation works the exact same way, but with well consumer mods that provide a buff-based effect. So hopefully now you've got the gist of Elemental Wells. The system can be a bit confusing at times, but testing out mods and using light.gg are great ways to get used to this system and start creating your own builds. Don't be afraid to return this video as well if you need a refresher. I've marked chapter timestamps in the description so you can easily skip to each part. If you have any questions about mods, build crafting, or just the game in general, please feel free to hop into the Team Unity Discord in the description and ask away. There's almost always someone on to answer any questions you may have, and we teach new players to do Sherpa runs super often. If you like what I do, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.